Greetings. Accessing archive. Authorizing. Access granted. Accessing file.
Oh yeah, remind me how to pronounce your last name.
It's Clementine Kruczynski.
Kruczynski.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Clementine Oh my God. I'm sorry. Kruczynski, right?
It's crew, like
crew?
ship crew,
Okay.
and then
Chin.
and then ski.
Okay, Kruczynski. All right,
Yeah.
I got it.
You got it. Okay.
All right, we're rolling. Welcome everyone. I'm here with Clementine Oh my God. I'm here with Clementine. I'm here with Clementine I'm gonna get this. It's funny, and I like this actually. I'm here with Clementine Kruczynski.
Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm good. A little tired, being honest. I had a big morning, but I'm feeling really grateful for the chance to finally drop in with you. It's someone I really admire, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. As always, I love our conversations. So
yes, me too. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super happy. I mean, so for the people listening, just a little background as to our connection. You actually run a Church of the Sacred Womb. You are the founder, and you work with another good friend of mine, Astra. And you guys do amazing work in the space of integration of psychedelic medicines, as well as, just general, practicing it in its highest form of respect for what these plants can do for us all. I've been to a number of your gatherings, and I've always found them to be just absolutely beautiful, absolutely sacred, and some of the most amazing community circles that I've, ever been part of. And it's been just absolutely amazing working with you. And it's great to get this chance to share the story about you and the church that you have founded with the audience, but to give them a little more background, I'm just curious, how would you describe yourself, who you are, what you do, and where you're going on this path that you're on?
Yeah, loaded topic. I want to first just say also that I'm actually a co-founder. So shout out to Astra, my partner in this work, and who's been there since the beginning as well. So we actually call ourselves co-founders. And but yeah, I'm the executive director. I work with all the major decision making and vision and planning and things like that. And really grateful for my team and my partner, my actual romantic partner, my husband Leo, who they just put up with me. I feel somewhat like a mad scientist, mad genius, where I'm just like, I go on these whims and I'm in these crazy wormholes of research and development of downloads, and really grateful for their support and commitment to this path as quote, quote, out there as it can be, depending on the wormhole.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I work. Most of my focus at this time has been on building the foundation of the church, which has been a 4-year project to this point. And I feel really, really lucky. I know a lot of people are really striving to find their purpose in this life. And so to really be aligned with that and to be devoted to it is really a privilege that I recognize. And I feel very honored to do the work that I do. And then as an individual, I had a really long journey with my own business. I started with an apprenticeship with a business coach, a really well-known sort of speaker and coach. And so I had a 5-year apprenticeship with him. And but he helped me sort of realize that, you can have a job, but then you can also build a business where the ceiling on what you can earn is a lot higher and or non-existent. So I was in the entrepreneurial world really early on, way before my awakening. I was around 20 when I started this business mindset. And I had a feng shui business. I did feng shui and space healing. I call it space healing now. which is where effectively I make spaces that can really nurture people, which is a tremendously healing modality. Like if your own space nurtures you and heals you, it's just a tremendous advantage in the
Absolutely.
harshness of the world.
No wonder your house is so awesomely set up. I never knew that. That's really cool.
Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah. 8 years I did that. And,
wow. Makes sense.
Yeah, personal organization and help people with systems. That's one way I'm unique, is I have really good grasp on systems and left brain, as well as the more intuitive, creative side. So I'm a really good hybrid of both. But
very cool.
Yeah, so space, I call it space healing now. It was the first modality that I really knew I could speak to spirit. So it's called space whispering, actually, where the objects and the spaces will actually speak to me. And it's a really long, old concept. In Roman times, it was called the genius loci, or the spirit of the space. Anyhow, could go on that for a while, but essentially, so that kind of morphed into coaching work, because people sort of started to approach me about life coaching, and I was already doing a lot of that, going through people's most intimate spaces and their papers, and really helping them kind of in a general sense. And I started working, I built an art collective. So I started working in the arts and applied kind of the business knowledge I had gained from my apprenticeship and applied there. And that kind of blew up unexpectedly. So I did that for 3 years, just again, like community organization, similar to what I do now, just in the bar scene, or the, the creative music scene, art scene.
And have you always lived in Austin?
I'm from North Houston originally. Always been in Texas, but I came here for school at UT in 2007, and I've just been here since.
Okay, cool.
So much magic here. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it really does have, a charge to it. And it seems to be an area, a really good area for you to be with the gifts that you have to share, for sure.
Yeah, I've had a lot of visions over the years, especially like when I was working with the arts. It started that around that time, which was 2013 to 2016. So I was doing that concurrently with my business building and with my kind of management of clients, and those were kind of simultaneous work for me. But I would have all these visions about the land here, and how like there was so much potential here, and it had to do with like the aquifer, and we could get into all that. But
I have seen visions about Austin as well, to be quite honest. It's so interesting how, it's almost like energy or influence or intentional power. And I've laid down and had, psychedelic states where I could, in Austin, where I could see that this was a mecca of spirituality in the United States, and certainly the most spiritual city I've ever spent time in. I haven't gone to India or the Mayan temples or any of these amazing places people go to feel that spiritual surge of history and influence there. But Austin certainly feels that way for me every time I go, and I really appreciate that about it. But so you worked for yourself for a number of years, and then kind of as well working with different companies and helping community organize. You say this is before your awakening. So were you happy doing all this stuff?
What do you mean by happy?
I guess I mean with awakening typically comes a sense of purpose and a deeper drive towards feeling like why you're here on Earth. And I could be, fully taking awakening in a different way than maybe you meant it. But that's kind of what I wonder, because I had, in my own experience, dealt with depression before my quote-unquote awakening. And, my life wasn't bad. I had a ton of stuff to be grateful for, but how connected was I to that gratefulness, So I don't know.
Maybe we kind of have different views on the term. For me, awakening does normally start with the descent into the underworld, or the hero's journey, where you really are going more into the darker parts of life. Everybody thinks it's this glorious, like enlightenment, but it's actually a clearing process first. And there's a lot of clearing, a lot of deprogramming. So it's kind of, in my view, understood as a descent, and then kind of you hit rock bottom, and then you kind of like build your way back up on your own terms and according to your own spirit, to put it kind of succinctly.
Sure.
But so for me, my awakening started in 2013, simultaneously around when I was starting with the art collective work. But my ex-boyfriend of 5 years died in a car accident.
Oh, no.
And and it was just very personal death to me. It was very sudden.
Sure.
And there was just so much there. And so it really just awakened me to my own emotional world more deeply and to my own depth. And so to me, that started that process of like, wow, like who I thought I was really isn't who I thought it was. And there's so much more here. And it was sort of from there an uncovering process and a clearing, also a karmic clearing. So
I bet.
but yeah, my business building and everything, I feel very lucky to have always had teachers along my journey. I've always had a lot of guidance, at least as I kind of started out in the world. And so I had teachers kind of guiding me first to be in business for myself. And I've actually never had a real matrix job, as it were, except for in high school working retail.
Right. Were these teachers mentors?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how did you find these mentors?
One was through Craigslist, through a job posting. That was the business apprentice. Then one of them, so through my journey, I kind of realized, I think now my understanding of it now is that I am certainly somewhat on the Asperger spectrum or autistic spectrum to some extent. I'm certainly neurodivergent, which has been a whole thing to kind of integrate and be aware of. But so I didn't really start out with good social skills, to say the least. Like I really didn't understand how to connect with people, which was kind of the result of a lifetime of not really fitting in and not really making sense to my peers. And so kind of when I got into college and was more living in the world, I was really interested in learning how to connect, but I just had no skills. So I would read these books about how to talk to people and things like that. And so I would go and do these little social experiments, I called them, where I would go into public and my heart would be racing and I would be kind of pushing myself to connect with people and developing just past hi, how are you? And it would at first be so challenging. My gosh, like entire nervous system override or like overwhelm. And but I remember one of them, I was going to go to this arts, it was a East Austin studio tour. And I was going to go to this arts event and go down the line. And I was going to talk to every artist at every booth. And it was such a challenge, but I did it. And one of them, this is an example, like one of them, I ran into one of my teachers there and we had an immediate connection. And so she was like a more meditative kind of energetic realm teacher. But yeah, so that was a way that one came.
Wow. What was it that you felt attracted to about these mentors?
Now I think of it that I had soul contracts with them, just certainly how it felt at the time, but I don't know if I had that language. But so it was more just kind of like, maybe I taught them in a past life or maybe, we've had a long journey together as souls. But so I don't know if there's like an answer for that per se on a logical level, but I would say that it was just that experience where you just meet someone and you drop in with them. And there's this feeling of that immediate resonance and alignment of like, yes. And we're supposed to connect and we're supposed to, for a lot of them, it was like trading of skills, like I can help them organize or they could help me develop in another way. Or
For me, with the mentors I've bumped into, I always felt like they were able to do something I wanted to know how to do. It was like, for example, Mitch Schultz, director of DMT, the Spirit Molecule, was probably the most profound mentor that I had. And I met him when I was 18. It was, hey, he's made a film. I want to make films. That's inspiring. I have no idea how to make a film. I mean, I know how to do my own indie version, but like his film was professional. It seemed to have a budget, and it seemed to have a ton of crew behind the camera, not just me, you know what I mean? Like, because when I shoot, it's just me. It's me and my friends, you know? But he was able to direct a full crew to a means, or to an end, I should say. And that was very inspiring. And I was like, whoa, if there's anything I can learn from this guy, I'm totally willing to do whatever I can do to help him. To learn it in return as well. And that's kind of how that relationship formed. And I also found mentorship with my brother, my older brother, who I grew up with. And I never saw him that way at the very beginning because he was just my older brother and he wasn't really an adult either yet. But after he kind of got his footing through this experience with the military he was in, he came back a leader. You know, he came back changed, and he had been through stuff. And he knew how to lead, and he was a leader in his platoon, and he became a sergeant in the Army as well. And I was very attracted to like this quality of transformation. He's a new person. It's almost like he's, you know, an evolved version of himself, as well as, the ability to lead and lead with respect. You know what I mean? Lead in a way that felt like it had dignity to it. So for me, it was definitely like qualities I've been attracted to and want to learn how to hone for myself, because I do find that, you know, part of my path is, it seems to be, you know, to be in some type of leadership role in the creative world. Just speaking to, you know, people that might be interested in mentors and what those things are and what can come of that. I mean, my whole life wouldn't be what it is today if it weren't for mentors. But it also wouldn't be what it is today without me seeking it, aligning with it, and deciding to try. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I want to speak to your point that you shared at in July at the Mind Jam event with the podcast launch. And you were on, you know, you were speaking, and I think you were working with your brother actually speaking. Yeah. But you were basically saying, and it was so potent, and I feel like this is so the key, so I just want to highlight it here, where you were speaking about showing up with generosity, that, you know, everybody just wants to get things, and there's this consumptive, extractive energy. Like, a lot of people approach me to be in an apprentice role, and I turn down most of them because they're in a place where they're trying to extract from me, whereas the people that want to show up and are generous. And obviously we're all tired. This system in itself is tiring and draining. And, you know, we all have our own challenges. And it's like, but people will show up with this attitude of, yes, whatever you need me to do, like, you need me to clean buckets, I'm there. Like, you need me to do this, I'm there. You need me to take out your trash, scoop your litter box, I'm there. This attitude of wherever I can serve. And it's a generous service-based mindset. And you were speaking to that to the event. And I felt like you were so highlighting one of the most important elements to securing truly aligned mentors and showing up with a heart of service. And you were speaking to this notion of, like, sometimes it takes 5 years before something even gets off the ground. And that is the truth. And, you know, but in this world, everyone wants instant gratification. And, you know, and I've run into like apprentice type roles who they immediately want to sit at the decision-making table, and they immediately want to have all of the authority. And it's like, I don't even know you. And like, who are you? And like, what is this myth that you're going to come into something that I've been birthing for 4 years and just think that you can like run it or should be able to. Right. And I want to just use a metaphor for this that I really like, based on I've like helped serve in ayahuasca ceremonies in an apprentice/service role. And like, that's a structure that I think about. It's like, if I'm going to a mentor's, like, I would never step into someone's ayahuasca ceremony structure as a helper and tell them how to do it.
Right.
I would never cross that boundary. Like, whatever they need. You need me to clean the buckets? Fine. You need me to put toilet paper in the bathroom? Fine. You need me to help clean up someone that purged on themselves, take them to the shower? Fine. Like, whatever. It is a service-based role. Even though in my structure, I'm at the, you know, in the leadership role, I will step into someone's Aya ceremony and be at the bottom rung helping, because that's what the role is. And so it's this mindset and heart role of service, and acknowledgement of place,
Yeah,
like, are you a
absolutely.
student? Like, don't
Yes,
go
coming
to
up.
this, you know?
Yeah, coming in with that, I'm here to learn, I'm here to help, I'm here
Yeah,
to do whatever you pass on to me,
right.
and not, overstep any boundaries. And what's interesting is I can realize that now, in hindsight, but I was 18 when this happened. It was just
Mhm.
this way that felt right to me. Like, now I can kind of analyze and see how I was the way I was, and that it actually really worked. But back then, I was just truly grateful for the opportunity, period, at
Yeah.
all. If I can just get you coffee, Mitch, I'm
Right.
happy. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, so
Yes.
that's how it was. And my brother always kind of gave that credit to me too, that because I was helping with his company, Sheath, I wasn't saying, okay, now pay me for my help. I was just
Yeah.
generously
Yep.
consulting, creative, video work,
Yep.
audio work. I'm doing it all because I want to be involved, and I support this, and I support you. And through that, it actually fired him up to believe that what he was doing was valuable enough to keep going, despite there being no money, despite us getting 2-3 sales a week, and now where the company is now, we wouldn't be if it weren't for our synergy, you know what I mean? And the fact that I didn't need payment to keep pushing this company forward, and the fact that he appreciated that I was that way, so he kept pushing it forward. And together we really built something cool. And I'm sure there's a lot of parallels with what you and Astra are doing as well. Yeah, if you want to speak to that, but I guess, we did get off a little of the timeline there, but
Totally.
there, beautiful conversation. But there was a period in time where you had an awakening. It sounds like it was through the death of your then boyfriend. And what happened next? How did you meet Astra? How did this church begin? How did psychedelics enter your life and plant medicine?
Oh my gosh. Well, psychedelics had actually been in my life since I was about 15. I was in like a small suburban town of Houston, and I wanted to try the drugs, and the whole town would not have it. And in my experience, or in my understanding of it now, is like I was just being projected upon by the whole, like all of the shadow of the town was being projected onto me. And I was kind of this role, which I'm still this role. It's like the destroyer of falsehood, or it's like just the shadow worker, where it's like all y'all people, all this stuff is kind of sitting around and nobody's going through it. No one's looking at it. So I'm going to be this force where I go in and I show it all to you and I embody it. And then you get to like see your own darkness kind of role. And then it shatters illusions because they have to actually face it. Hopefully a lot of people don't, but anyhow, so yeah, psychedelics had always been a part since my high school days. But I kind of like, got over it. I was like, and then I just graduated, went to college, was kind of over it. And so, but then my journey, so my ex-boyfriend died. And then 2 months after that, my sister had been devolving into a psychosis, but none of us really realized it because of that big death process in the family, because he was very close to the family. And so then, like, suddenly through the grieving process, we're all like blindsided by the fact that my sister is literally in a psychotic break, and we had to like institutionalize her. This is my youngest sister. And it was just heart-wrenching because none of us, so this kind of turned me on to like the darker side of psychedelics, and like, wow, like if you go too far, like what can happen?
Was she using psychedelics a lot or something?
Somewhat okay. In my understanding. I also don't like to share too much about her personal journey, but it's not my journey to share. But effectively, it tremendously impacted me. And I had also been really developing psychically at the time, and really, due to that death, and sort of right before, it was like 2012 and the ending of 2012, and it's just kind of like a magical moment in the collective. But long story short, it just exploded everything even more. And it was just like one thing after the other. Felt like And so July 4th, my ex-boyfriend had died on January 9th, 2013. So July 4th, I'm like, I have to do something. Like, this grief is just overwhelming me. I'm also like starting to get more in the public eye because I was working with this art collective that was just getting bigger and bigger. And so I'm like, I decided to just take LSD by myself in my apartment, which I had done plenty of times, but never from a perspective of I'm going to heal myself. Like, it's going to be for healing and catharsis. It had always been more of like, oh, let's hang out,
Sure.
So it blew my mind how much power there was in the intention to heal and feel.
Yeah,
actually.
Totally. 100%.
And that was just a game changer. So it was like all the floodgates opened. I realized how much I had been denying myself to feel, and just literally went under the veil, And so that kind of started this new practice for me of like using psychedelics. Of course, I didn't tell many people. I was not out of the closet really. And then my public life kind of blew up more and more. And I was just really under a lot of pressure to maintain this kind of public image. And so that was a whole challenge in itself. But so anyway, continuing the story a little further, essentially my public life blew up and then the bubble burst because I realized there were like some pretty devastating foundational cracks, namely misogyny, that was very deeply rooted. And I called it out, and again, had that experience of like the shadow of the group being projected on me. Sure. And I was scapegoated and kind of character assassinated. Anyway, so then that really sent me into this deep healing process of just like, wow, I had this very public breakup and this very public, loss. And so I went really underground after that.
This episode is brought to you by Element Kombucha. Kombucha is an incredibly delicious drink with a ton of amazing health benefits, primarily gut health. It's got those good bacterias. Yes, some bacterias are good. I've actually got a bottle of Element Kombucha in my hand. This one is called Summer Vibes. So let's take a sip. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. That's the first time trying this particular flavor, and it is delicious. My other favorites are the Mountain Oolong, as well as the Jasmine Hibiscus. Element's brewing process maintains the traditional methods and ingredients that people have been brewing kombucha with for thousands of years. Each flavor is brewed with strict parameters to bring out the benefits of the plants as well as the best flavors possible. And let me tell you, you can feel the difference. I highly recommend you give Element Kombucha a try. It's delicious, it's healthy, and it's just nice to have in your fridge for when you're thirsty. So go to elementkombucha.com and use promo code Xian11 to save 11%. That's Xian11 to save 11%. XIAN 11 at elementkombucha.com. This episode is also brought to you by Sheath, the underwear of legends. What makes Sheath different is the pouch on the inside. Now, this is a game-changing invention that completely revolutionizes the male undergarment. These are the most comfortable underwear I have ever worn, by far. They've got amazing designs and styles, super comfortable fabrics. My favorite is the bamboo and also the V, which is a long leg athletic underwear that doesn't ride up, and it supports you where it matters most. So go check out Sheath at sheathunderwear.com and use promo code TIMEWHEEL to save 20%. Once again, that's sheathunderwear.com, promo code TIMEWHEEL.
So that started what I understand as my actual initiation journey, although it had well been starting since.
Yeah, it always is starting before it is in our consciousness that it has begun. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I talk about this in a number of ways on my show, but one is that there is almost like a future pull going on that knows where it's going. Like and it puts you through experiences to prepare you for where you're going. And each experience before, without the experiences prior, you wouldn't be prepared for. But because you'd been through this, that, and the other thing, you recognize why you've been through those things, the challenges you've been through, and are perhaps prepared to deal with this thing that if it had happened on its own without the preparation, you wouldn't have, accomplished or achieved or gotten past. I don't know how to describe it, but in psychedelic states, I certainly feel as if everything is in a divine timing, and that everything that had happened to me, even when I felt like I was a victim, was supposed to happen to me.
Absolutely.
So there's that. But
it's 100%.
you feel that too?
It's actually the design of it, I think. And most people just are afraid to kind of take those few steps into the unknown and into the pain that they're feeling. And so they don't actually move through the pain, and they don't actually go through that evolutionary release, death process, and rebirth. So then they don't evolve, and I think that's the design of it. And in the mythological realms and in the shamanic realms, it's known as the shaman's initiation, the underworld journey, the descent of the soul. It's known as the hero's journey. And it's all the same thing. We're talking about an archetypal process, like an archetypal storyline, that there's a reason why that's in all of our stories, in our movies, and our, the hero sets off and realizes that he doesn't really have power. So he goes into this, whether he leaves the village or he abandons everything he knows to whatever extent, he goes and he gets trained by either a mentor or tremendous challenges that he or she overcomes. And so, and then in the process of overcoming and being beat down by life or the challenges or what have you, they find their strength. And in that is the becoming. And then they return to the village, they return to what they knew stronger. And as a leader, just as you described with your brother, if you think about Hercules as a kind of quintessential storyline of this, and it's basically the underlying story to everything, all of our, myths. And so this is what is really the initiation process. And without that, you can't do what you're here to do. And you can't, I also think of it like the hermit shell, like the smaller hermit shell. The crab leaves the smaller shell, and he's naked and vulnerable and exposed to predators and exposed to the elements. And then they find the bigger shell that fits them. And you go through that process hundreds of times before you really get into your power in any, manner of speaking. But so we're talking about a really important part of the journey, especially with regard to psychedelics.
Right. Well, what would you call a true initiation?
Going through what we're talking about and going through it fully. It is my, shall I say, exasperated conclusion, or I am a little frustrated with the modern kind of capitalistic, like I'm your coach and I'm your guide or I'm your facilitator. And it is my understanding that very few have truly gone through the cycles of initiation, almost like they're half baked. And then they're like, well, I need to make money, so I'm going to make a business serving psychedelics to people, even though I have no idea what I'm doing because I'm not fully initiated.
Right. Let's talk about that a lot, because it's easy for people to have passion around these medicines, but how to know when you're not prepared to lead others? You know what I mean? How to know where you are in your journey, because this is important, because people can feel like, I've seen it all. Like, I understand the mysteries of the universe and I need to show others. And the psychedelic space can kind of almost encourage that too. It can kind of say, this is healing. Yes, this will help people. You should do it. But where is that fine line between when you're ready to do that and when it's premature?
Yeah. It's a really challenging thing because everybody's journey is so different. So this is the question, right? Is like, how do we standardize? How do we standardize our service or our standards of facilitation? So something I'm really interested in as somebody that does have a systems mind, is like, how do we create systems of whether it's, accreditation or what have you. But basically, one major thing about it that I just want to say right off the bat is that if it's something that you're pursuing or that you are seeking out and pushing to happen, that is not the way. That is not the way. That is not how these medicines work. It should fall into your lap
Right.
in a way that is even bewildering.
Totally.
So that right there is a huge part of it, because it's like this whole thing of like, well, I know what's best, and I'm going to tell them how to do it. I'm going to do it, rather than like, oh, universe, you're showing me steps toward this. I'm going to acknowledge those steps and that I have some time to get there and that you're going to guide the way. And when I'm ready, you're going to show me the way. It's not like, oh, I need to make money, so I'm going to, serve people DMT, and they're not even psychically attuned to what they're doing, as an
100%.
example. Or
100%.
Or I have people in my network, extended network, let me say, that like they've been on their awakening journey for a year and a half or less. I've only maybe known them for 8 months, and think they're ready to serve ayahuasca.
Right.
And I'm like, and they serve it to unwitting people. And I'm just like, who the fuck would do that? Like, clearly people that are not supposed to be serving it,
Right. That is one of the harsh, realities, that these things have been affected by the drug war and the demonization, by the church and these types of things, and not your church, but I mean the Catholic Church, because they drive them underground to the point that there is no accreditation, there is no certificate, there is no school. So people just think, oh, this is willy-nilly, the wild, wild west, and anyone can do this. And, I think that it is, slightly naivete that happens, but also the fact that there are no structures in place. And it is important that people are building those structures. And that seems like what you're doing, and a mission that you have as well. And it is very important, and I would say, it should really fall into your lap and be a synchronistic sequence of events that you cannot ignore, that literally says, this is what you're meant to do. This is what you're supposed to be doing. We're going to show you until you understand this is your path, not this side hustle you have, Yeah,
like, I don't even want to go into the whole capitalistic intersection with like where people are like, well, I need to make money, so I'm going to serve psilocybin in a ceremony. And it's like, the thing about it is like, what people don't understand is like, this is not just a substance. You're not just opening people's, you are opening psychic channels to worlds that if you do not understand what you're doing, you can harm people when you think you're helping them. And this is the most critical thing, is like, I'm like thinking about this time I was having a gathering, and this guy decides to serve DMT in my office at this gathering. So there's like 100 people at my house, and he decides to invite like 5 to 10 people into my office right next to my bedroom, by the way. And he only gets one person's consent and doesn't ask. So why I'm bringing this up is because so we had opened a cacao circle where we, open a sacred space and call in the guides and set protections for the cacao that we're serving. at the party. So like there's, 80 to 100 people in this circle, and you're calling in their psychic elements, you're calling in their soul parts, you're calling in their guides. We're creating a container where we're all on the same psychic plane, if you will.
Right.
And he decides to serve DMT with all of those people present without their consent. So he's essentially opened a portal. Within the portal I had already created that was grounded, consented with, by, and all these things. And he opens a portal to who the fuck knows where without even, so what happens is if something comes through that he's unaware of, he is subjecting every single person at that gathering psychically to the channel he's opening.
Right.
And he doesn't have even permission from everybody or the main leader of the space. So it's just stuff like that it's like, you don't understand the psychic implications of what you're doing. And like, do you even have permission from the land spirits? Did you even talk to the land spirits? Did you, are you even connected to what you're doing psychically whatsoever? And that's what I mean by like the initiation process and having that true initiation, because it's like, there's just this element of the unseen worlds that you're affecting. And I feel like so few people care or are even aware of that. And then let alone asking true permission. Like I would never open a psychedelic portal without making an offering to the land in recognition of what I'm doing and asking for permission. Like just, so there's a lot of implications, and I feel like I'm on a soapbox about it now, but I do feel like there's a lack of, a lack of self-awareness around it, like majorly. They think they're ready and you're just not ready.
Right. It makes so much sense what you're saying. And I feel like this is the way that these medicines have been revered and used for thousands of years. I am curious, how did you come to these understandings? Because you seem to have a much more advanced understanding as to what's going on when psychedelic portals are opened, as you're saying, than the common tripper. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How did you find this information, knowledge? Is it coming from books or experiences, or you're intuiting it, you're understanding it just firsthand? Is what's going on with it?
It is. Honestly, I do not know. My gut, and essentially, I think I was sharing about this actually at your June event on the panel, but where essentially it's like the more you clear of your own, whether it's like projections, traumas, memories of where you're attached to these traumas, or you clear these like attachments and everything. There's all this like psychic and emotional material that hangs around any given person's field. It's like the more you clear of that through your process, the more you actually just reclaim your true self. And the more you reclaim your true self, you just open more and more portals of understanding that is just who you are. And for me, like, it goes back really far. Like, I'm a very old soul. And like, if I may share, it's like connected with, really ancient earth tribes and like Lemuria, Atlantis, like these societies before our current society were even on the map. And I root in this really ancient earth knowledge that just comes to me. And I'm just a channel. I'm an oracle and a channel. And it's because I've cleared enough of who I thought I was and died enough times that this stuff just comes. Right. And it's like, because I'm just who I always was now. And this is like identifying as the soul self. So, but there was a lot of actual, experiences of discovery psychically around this, of like, whoa. And, if you've ever taken 5-MeO-DMT in itself, it's like, whoa, download, major download. And it's like, it's just, it's very simple, actually, to me. It's very simple. It's not, it's like, it's obvious when you see it.
Totally.
Anyway, so I can't. Sorry. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense, and I have felt similar things. I don't really know how to language them, but there are, one way I'm able to identify possibly what's been up with my soul in the past, or where I've come from or why I'm so attracted to this work is the things I'm magnetized towards. So, for example, I'm very magnetized towards the Tao Te Ching. It just hits me as truth when I hear it. It just feels right. So when I think of, that being one of the major thought systems that I can identify with, and it feels truthful to me versus the Bible feeling truthful to me, it kind of points me in the direction of perhaps in a past life, or perhaps my soul is connected to the thought systems that created the Tao Te Ching. Or maybe I was, I'm just guessing. I'm just fantasizing almost. But maybe I was one of the writers of this thing, and I'm discovering my own work. You know what I mean? I don't know. But sometimes I can kind of feel into that experience, because there's so few things in the world that feel like truth to me. But that is one of the things, the Tao Te Ching.
Absolutely. And I think you're just talking about like the law of resonance and there's a soul identity, there's a soul identity underneath all of our given avatars. It's like an umbrella being that creates all of the different lives. And I think that it is possible to clear enough programming at all, in order to really reach that. And it does also, so I have this whole branding process. My own personal work has been majorly on the back burner, but I have these amazing programs that I don't really share much. It's a whole thing to launch and market. But I have this branding process called Mythos Magic. And it's essentially this idea of uncovering the soul identity. And it boils down to archetypes, among a lot of other elements, but it boils down to archetypes. And like for me, you Matt have a very like alchemy, like alchemist, kind of almost wizard archetype in the soul self, like in your essential being, and almost kind of like this tinkerer, like inventor energy, along with a lot of other, like you kind of have this fun, like mischievous side, and like you have a lot of these kind of flavors that I really enjoy. But when it boils down to it, that's to me, like I could see you being in, like ancient alchemy labs and, or like a part of the libraries and stuff like that. And where I have an archetype of like librarian, kind of wisdom keeper, shadow worker, dark goddess archetype. And so it boils down to kind of like really exploring who you are on the soul level. And once you get there, it's really a lot more fun. But of course, you've cleared a lot of bullshit.
Right. I feel like the real video game or role-playing game, the fantasy world unveils itself, and it's been here all along. People have been playing this game all along, understanding how connected things are, and that this is deeper than just our one life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in video games, you have 10 lives or infinite lives. If you die, you come back, like whatever. It's almost a metaphor for how worked up people can get about their one life and have no fun with what came before or what's coming after. And I don't know. I mean, it is for the spiritual alchemists to discover and to share the stories of that. And there's not a ton of those people. Certainly it's on the rise, it seems to be. Yeah. But that is, an interesting way to, I think, alleviate depression by understanding like the larger scope and the larger fun factor having aspect of life. And to not be overly bitter or overly serious or, these types of things that can easily accumulate inside of us, especially in the age of social media where everything is pushed in your face about how great everyone's life is, and here you are on the couch or whatever, you know what I mean?
Comparing and
right.
Yeah, you're speaking to a really poignant point, and it does boil down to attachment as well, which is like the suffering, like oh, I'm attached to being Clementine, and like if I died, I would be upset, and like I have my own attachments. Like I love my husband tremendously, and I'm so grateful he's in my life, and I would be really sad if our story were to end prematurely and things like that. And like, I love the work Oscar and I do and things like that. I would be really sad if they were gone.
Right.
But the poignant point is, what you're speaking to is like when people can zoom out and identify as the sole creator, then everything that happens, I mean, the rub is that you have to accept that you have created or contributed to literally every negative situation you've ever experienced, and that you wanted it on some level. And that's the rub. Like, people do not want to step into that, but that's what is holding them back from even being in their power in the first place, including very fucked up shit. Like, I've been through very fucked up shit that I'm just like, damn, a dark part of me really loved that. Like, damn, you know, like a sadist or masochistic part of me really liked it, for example, but yeah, zooming out and working on these higher consciousness levels, it's like, it really does wipe away. Like, and I've seen it when I take people through this program. Like, it's really cool because I help people step into their power, like in their, you know, they're ready to revamp their branding or change their branding or to step out in the first place. It's because it really stems from, can you see their real essence? Like, can you see who they really are? But so what it does is it's like, all of a sudden it gives them this lease on life, like that they can completely transcend whatever, you know, insecurities they have. Because it's like, no one can do it the way they do it. Like, no one can wizard the way you can wizard, Matt. Like, they just can't, you know, no one can, because you have a unique flavor that somebody out there, they would only taste that dish if it was with that flavor, you know?
Right.
And so it's like the difference between being like, I'm a life coach, or like, I'm a life coach that helps highly sensitive people step into their power when they're first stepping into their gifts. Like, because you understand that your identity as a soul is like maybe more of like a mentor guide when people are fledgling into their process or whatever. It just helps you define the niche. And
So something that came up in that for me is ownership. Ownership of our mistakes, ownership of our karma, and to not, you know, blame the outside world or the outside person or persons for a negative situation you're in, because so much of where we are is a result and or a reaction to actions we took. And maybe they were mistakes. Maybe you truly didn't mean it. Maybe you accidentally, you know, got angry. You didn't want to get angry, whatever it is. For me, in my psychedelic states, I have seen the other person's perspective more times than I can count. I have seen how I was being to them and not how I felt I should be. And I could empathize for these people that maybe I wronged. And sometimes even to the point that if I didn't truly feel like I wronged them, I wanted to apologize in case I wronged them. Like, I just want, you know what I mean? Like, I feel into that a lot. Because it's just, you know, we all have protective barriers. We all have boundaries. We all have things that agitate us or pull our strings or push our buttons or whatever the term you want to use is. And, you know, we all have reactions. And sometimes there's been cases where I stopped talking to someone in the past and then later realized potentially my role in all of that. And, you know, take ownership, admit it to yourself first and foremost. That's the most powerful thing you can do. And then if you can really take the next step, send that energy to that person, whether it be through just a thoughtful message or a call, or next time you see them in person, just say, you know, yo, my bad for my part in that, you know, and I accept that. I played a role in that, and it wasn't just you, or that, or whatever, you know what I mean? And that, I feel, is the act of burning karma, you know? It is like, some people will take these things to their grave
Yeah.
before ever admitting fault. And when you're in your death experience, when your time has come, you're going to see how wrong you were every time, I feel. So to accept those things prior and integrate those things prior, you have a higher possibility and chance of that death experience being more, I'm coasting. I'm leaving the body and I'm happy. You know what I mean? I'm leaving the body and I feel like it is my time, and I did my work and I tried my hardest and my best, and I'm proud of myself. Because so many people, look back on life and feel like they didn't try. They didn't give it their best. They didn't make those, humbling decisions. They didn't apologize to that person even when it was their fault. All these things come up in these psychedelic states. And that's why, to me, these are spiritual tools. This isn't, let's have fun. It's like, is it fun integrating and remembering the time you were an asshole and accept that? Is that fun? You know what I mean? I don't know. What does this all bring up for you?
It's just, I so admire your, this is just what the essence of humility and what I'm hearing is, that essentially it's a direct transmutation tool that to own. And, it's like you want to be plagued by this same lesson like 30 times and just continue to accumulate the same, pain over 30 different times? Or do you want to just accept and say, okay, life is showing me this. I humble myself and say yes. Very painful, depending on, I'm speaking to the audience, like it could be very painful. Like, but at the same time, it like clears it. It's a direct transmutation process. It's a direct, maybe almost like I'm seeing like you swallow it and you digest it. And it's like you're receiving and you're clearing that from the field, as opposed to just kind of brushing it around and you just keep sweeping it around and it just stays there. Maybe it's like a digestion or a processing, Yeah.
It is. It's mental health. It helps mental health. And it, people use this metaphor a lot, particularly Terence McKenna, that it wipes the operating system clean. It defrags our hard drive. It loosens up the files and empties the recycle bin, or these types of kind of computer-like metaphors as to what psychedelics do for our brain and our consciousness and our spirit and our soul and the oversoul and the collective and everything beyond, it just seems to have our best interest in mind. And even when, because I've heard it said, and I tend to agree, there's no such thing as a bad trip. If you had a hard time and you had to swallow some tough truths, and it wasn't fun, and it was fearful, and there was, some darkness that came up, that's for you to see. That's to help you not go that direction anymore. That's to show you the karma that you're building and to transform yourself so that you don't have to deal with that. You know what I mean? Because psychedelics, plant medicines, they give you a preview of this death experience, of this, reincarnation, if you will. And it can, that's why I think it aligns so many people back to their true soul's purpose and mission and dharma, is that they can die before they die. And again, I can't remember whoever quoted this, but it kind of said, to die before you die is to be truly awake,
As Oscar says, die before you die and let go before you go.
Exactly. That's it. So I take it you understand that these tools are of a spiritual nature. But at the beginning of your voyage with plant medicines and psychedelics, it seemed to be a little more casual. When was it that you fully started to grasp how powerful these things were and the lessons that they had to offer?
Yeah, I think it would be that time I was previously sharing about, where I utilized LSD for for healing for the first time, that was a major turning point for me. It was just a totally self-guided process. And that kind of turned me onto the shadow as well, like really seeing these kind of quote, quote, demonic entities and kind of really seeing these, let's say like, I don't know, what's the plural of nexus? Nexuses?
Nexi.
Is that really what it is? Wow.
I would guess. I don't know.
Nexi of, that's a really cool word anyway. But like these nexuses or like locuses of energy, like energy balls or like energy beings on this other side, and just kind of watching how they really would interfere with my process unless I would kind of claim my space and like acknowledge them. Like they would kind of play with me and fuck with me until I would claim, like, I see you and I know what you're doing and I'm not okay with it. And I claim my space. You're not allowed in my space, kind of thing.
I love that.
And once I would do that and kind of own my power, anyway, so that's what LSD helped me to kind of uncover in these kind of wormholes of awakening. I lived alone for 10 years as well, and through my journey, and I love living alone. Oh my God. But so because of that, I could always just be in like 3-day ritual spaces or like 3-day healing spaces or longer sometimes, depending on what I had going on. So these multi-day kind of voyages, to use your word. But after that, like my first time with ayahuasca, I was like, wow. Like, and that for me, like when I came to the plant medicines in the context of ceremony and in the context of like Shipibo, the Shipibo tradition was the first time I sat with ayahuasca. So for instance, like that cultural lineage, shamanic tradition. Yeah. It was so, well, my first point, I had already done so much of my remembering work, clearing and remembering work. So when I came to the medicine, I was already really aware of who I was. I was very early in my process and I still had a lot of trauma to address, still do, tremendous amount of trauma. But I came already really aware of my faculties and my power, and so Aya just really accelerated for me. Like she really just amplified everything, these portals that I was already kind of ferociously like expanding into, and kind of awakening to what's really going on in this world, and like how we all really have been asleep to these systems of oppression and what they look like and what actually are they and what could it really be like and what were the golden ages like, and
right.
And what was my role in all of it? And what is shadow? And so when I came, I saw so much beauty, and she really showed me like the world stage and like the chess game that was being played and her role in it. And it was just, it was more of an affirmation than anything. And, a lot more personal of my personal journey, but it took me I didn't do any psychedelic for 8 months. And not that I don't trip a lot. I'm not a person. I mean, I did a lot in high school, but from that point, like I don't really take a lot of medicine. I address and I integrate for a long time before I will, like, I don't seek it out. It's not something that I'm like, oh, I got to go, it's very, slow for me because I don't really need a lot. And, but so 8 months after, it took me 8 months to integrate. I did nothing. Of course, I don't even want to go into the whole personal journey, but I had a lot of trauma to clear after that occurred. And then I smoked 5-MeO DMT for the first time. And holy shit. The way I say it is like, how do I say it? If Aya blew the doors off, Toad burned the building down, like kind of thing. Yeah. Like, oh shit, that was just horrible for me. It was amazing. And why it was so challenging for me personally is because it awakened my Kundalini, which has been the most horrific, unfathomable, unsurmountable obstacle challenge I have ever experienced it by a landslide.
Wow. I would like to talk about that, but continue. Only because I just wanted to say I hear Kundalini as both favorable and unfavorable, and I want to get into what the differences are. But continue what you were saying.
Yeah, it's so different for every person. So, but but I didn't know it. That was the thing. It took me about a year before one of my teachers was like, "This is what's happening to you," and I was like, "Wow, game changed." That was 4 years ago when all this started, by the way. But anyway, so basically from that point, because I had been in the community building role for so many years, I had a large network. I always have had a lot of relationships, which is very challenging for me as a very highly sensitive person and a major introvert. But so I start telling everyone because I'm like, holy shit, this medicine, like, wow, like people need to know about this, right?
Yeah.
And so I start sharing about it to everyone. And I start bringing all these people to the medicine, and I was sitting in on these spaces. And so then it just kind of was, again, like this natural organic process of like working with the psychedelics in this realm of holding these spaces. And I kind of didn't go over this part of my journey, but like about 5 years prior, like maybe actually a few years prior, I'm not sure the timeline, I had started working more with ceremony and like ritual. I was really working in kind of like a reclamation of witchcraft, but more like earth-based sort of like ritual, and doing like moon ceremonies and things like that. So that structure piece had already been developing for a few years. And then so when I started this, it was like, I saw how much the psychedelics needed that structure and that grounding and that intention. And so that's the piece that I really brought, was the structure and how to do it in the most optimal way, with the best contracts with the unseen world, so that it would create the best container, the therapeutic container, essentially. So anyway, but so from that point, it just was really organic. And then we made the church to kind of support everything that we were doing, because we saw that was just, I hope it's okay to be sharing about all this, actually. But just to support everything we were doing. And it really just made sense. And so, and where we're at now, it makes a lot of sense. But at the time, I will just mention, like, there were very few psychedelic churches. This is in like 2017. It seemed ludicrous. Like, it just seemed like the most out there concept that I could ever, like, I tell my mom, she's Baptist, and she's like, you're making a church. Like, she's totally on board with everything I do. She's very awake. I'm very lucky. But she was just, it was just so outlandish to think about making a church, you know, but now a lot of people are doing it. But yeah. And then the way the church got founded and everything was just really mystical and magical and serendipitous. And like that happened. And so from there, it's just been really building the community base around it, and sort of the standards of integrity and maintaining everything, to really ground the portals.
Absolutely.
Like the support work around it. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys do an amazing job with all of that. And I did want to, absolutely. I did want to say, wasn't there a synchronicity about how you named it? Church of the Sacred Womb?
Yeah. This is like what was so weird about it was that, so I'm like writing a disclaimer because we're going to do a retreat. So I'm like writing and researching for the disclaimer, and I'm at the coffee shop, and I like look at Astra and I'm like, Astra, like what do we call ourselves? Like, what's the, you know, who are they not liable? Like, who's not liable? Like, is it an organization or is it us? Or, so she's like, all right. And she's like, I'll do some research. I'm like, okay. So we're just sitting there. I'm in my own world again. And she looks over at me again from the computer. And I still, like, this memory is so vivid for me. Like, I remember the dust specks sparkling in the sun. Like, I remember this moment of like the environment around us. And I just remember this drop moment of divine download on the table of this coffee shop. And she's like, Clem, like, I think we're supposed to make a church. And I'm like, and it was so, like I said, outlandish, but it felt so right. And it felt big, like, holy shit, how are we going to do that and ground that? But I had all this experience building this art collective and structuring like multi-level organizations and multi-department organizations. So I was like, well, I know how to do it, but it's a lot of fucking work. So we go home. We go home to my little casita on the east side, and we're like, all right, let's meditate, right? And again, we had called the ceremony structure that we had created, or that I had brought from my previous work, we called it a womb. And really, for me, this process was about really nurturing people and taking a feminine approach to these healing spaces. And so, which is the foundation of everything that we do, more or less. But so we knew that the structure was called the womb, but we independently went and we both heard womb as an independent, like that it's supposed to be called a womb. And it was just like, what? Well, so we came back together having meditated independently, and we were just blown away by the fact that we had both heard that same concept as the core element. Well, then the other piece is we had downloaded that there's supposed to be a council of 13 decision makers, right? We're like, okay, well, I had just spent all these years, making these brands for artists and stuff. So I'm like, okay, first thing you're going to do is look it up, like what's out on the market. Oh, by the way, we thought it was supposed to be called Temple of the Sacred Womb. So we downloaded Temple of the Sacred Womb, and we downloaded that there's supposed to be a council of 13 decision makers. Okay? Fair and well. So then we look it up, and there's not only a Temple of the Sacred Womb in Colorado Springs, which is now defunct, but they also on their about page had Council of 13. We're like, wow, what? Like, we never ended up connecting with them just for whatever reason, and now their website's gone. But it was like, so we named it Church, which is more in alignment with, this movement anyway. But that was this confirmation of like, this is something from another world that wants to come here. Right. And we are in service to this being that in our view is a goddess spirit and a feminine guide of the people, reinstating these ancient earth practices and knowledge. And we are here in service, and that has been how it has been. And we've been devoted for 4 years, largely with unpaid community work. And it has been so many twists and turns and losses and gains, and but it's more and more is making sense, and we're just kind of in awe about, again, to your point, is it often does take about 5 years before something even really gets going. And people that have that kind of stamina and vision and patience and commitment, you can make anything, but it takes a while. So absolutely. Yeah. So that's
that is powerful. That was a powerful journey. So I just wanted to, because I barely remember this, to be honest. How did you meet Astra, who is the co-founder of the church?
Yeah. In an ayahuasca ceremony. In that first time I did ayahuasca together, she was there with me.
Oh, wow.
And we met, and she was wearing this like big blue fluffy coat, and I'm very much like a cat, and she's very much like a cat. And I was like, can I pet you? And she was like, yes, you can pet me. And so we just we're like, amazing. Like just really right away, very, very connected. And she had stayed at my house like a few nights throughout those 8 months of my processing. And then we came together at the end of the year in 2017.
Wow. That's powerful. Yeah, because, partnership, a team really can help manifest things a lot faster than just on your own. And, it's even more potently available, or, I don't know, the universe responds more potently to when there's a spiritual inclination and a spiritual partnership going on too. Yeah. Because two people can be completely on different sides of the coin as far as their spirituality and still working together in tandem. But when they're on the same side of the coin, they understand each other in that way. I don't know. I feel like that's where real, magic happens when it comes to like creative ventures and stuff.
Agreed. Yeah, there's more dynamism, like you can really, but at the same time, like being really careful, because there's so many times when I was called to build with people and they really weren't the right people. And it obviously you learn a lot, and and but it's also its own form of karmic clearing. And so, yeah, just being really aligned within self and making sure that you're not giving your power away, or that your boundaries are respected, or that they're empowering you and giving you credit where it's due, and things like that. I feel, just as
Absolutely.
like a caveat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an important thing. I don't know why it seems like to some people, giving credit is like somehow depowering yourself. I feel like I don't understand that. Like I feel like so many people, not so many, but in my life, I've encountered people that will want the credit for themselves instead of actually give props to the person that taught them, or they helped them, or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with that. I've always thought of it as a cool thing to give credit to who I worked for, not to say I did it. It was me. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about this?
Oh man, I could write a volume on this, but I heard it recently. A friend called it attribution, like giving it attribution, which I like that word. Also, credit hits it. Like I have a big pain point here because an extensive list of people have copied my exact model and or benefited from me, used my ideas without accreditation. And, the question or the debate is like, well, is it really yours? And like, my thing about this is this notion of like, and I used to really struggle with this, like claiming credit even to my own self for like my own brilliance and my own gifts and my own alignment and ability to channel truth. And my one of my coaches at the time, she was like, well, the writer chooses to write the sentence. The photographer chooses to click the photo from that angle. Like, so it really is going through a lens of a person. Like, yes, it's universal truth, but how it's positioned, how it's communicated, with what tone, with what energy, with what flavor, all of that actually is attributable to the creator, the human. Like, we're choosing to capture it and in a certain way, and that's our essence, that's our gift. And so people that just reappropriate these ideas, and oh my God, like, so you're wondering what the issue is with it. What I've determined is what it actually is there's a parasite of the mind, and it's capitalistic, and there's some kind of like mind virus where people, it's like an extractive, I'm going to get that for myself and I don't have enough and I have to take from you. Right. And it's like this like fiending kind of addictive. And I actually see it very much as similar to like people's relationship with the land, and which we're all trying to get out of these kind of paradigms of like using and taking and making too much trash. And like, it's that same kind of energy of like in the shamanic world, we think of everything as living. And so like you go to an apple tree and most people are just going to pluck the apple off. They're going to feel entitled to that apple. They're going to say it's for them and I'm going to just take what I want. But then there's this shamanic view that's more like, I'm going to go to this tree and before I even enter the field of the tree, I'm going to be psychically connecting and telepathically communicating my honor and awe of this magnificent being. And I'm going to be entering its field of energy with reverence. And I'm going to go to it and I'm going to offer something like tobacco or incense or something. I'm going to offer something to this tree in acknowledgement of the spirit of this tree, and in acknowledgement of the entire ecosystem, which has led to the potential of this tree even fruiting. And I'm going to honor and come with humble reverence. And I'm going to ask the tree, may I receive your fruits that you have offered? And there's just a completely different approach to taking. And so that's the similar idea, like with the ideas, it's like, I love to give credit. Like for me, it's like, it empowers everyone around me. Like I love to make people larger than life, like mythological creatures. So it's like, if I'm in a group or like they call it rooms of opportunity. Like if I'm in a room of opportunity, I'm sure as hell gonna give credit to somebody that has inspired me, including people on my own team or people that are like working for me or in any capacity I'm gonna build them up because that's what they deserve. And likewise, it really boils down to like what we started this conversation with, which is like the hubris of people thinking that they're the expert before they're even truly initiated.
Right.
And like, that's what it boils down to, because I think that they don't do it because they don't truly feel like their own mastery because it's fully not baked yet. So it's like they want to hide that they're a student. They want to like hide that they're learning from other people or something. Like they don't feel fully in their own power, which they're not because they're not fully initiated. And it's also something around like our culture does not have that attribution quality. Like it's a very take extraction. Whereas other cultures, like teachers and mentors and guides were an inherent part of your process. Like you went 10 years, 20 years before you ever would be in a leader role, you know? And, you know, I get that nowadays, you know, it is a little more urgent and we are kind of in a crumbling state, but it's like, I see a lot of leaders and true teachers, like true people that have really done the work. Like we're talking 4 or 5 decades of work. And they don't have apprentices helping them the way they should. They don't have like, I'm like, where are the people that are going to show up in humble reverence and support these people so that they can get their work out into the world? We don't have that in our culture. So everyone thinks they're an expert after a year of their awakening. And it's like, honey, like you don't even know the half of what you're doing. Like, and so that's what I think is kind of the disease is like, there's this lack of humility and a lack of honoring your teachers as a lineage.
Absolutely. Something coming up for me is it's a lack of soul maturity, perhaps, because it kind of makes me think of, remember when, you know, maybe we've seen this as adults and maybe I even did it as a kid, but when you're a toddler and someone calls you a kid, and you're like, I'm not a kid, you know. Clearly, you're a kid, right? You know, or when you're a preteen, you know, you're 11 years old, and they're like, oh, they're a kid, and you're like, no, I'm a preteen, you know. It's like I'm almost a teenager. I'm grown up. You know what I mean? It's kind of that same naivete as to like the full length of this journey. And where you are in it right now, you know what I mean? They want to feel like, oh, I'm an adult. You know, I, for myself, still, and I've talked about this on my show, I feel this like slight disconfidence in what I have to share because I still feel like I'm at the beginning of my journey, you know? And but I feel like if I just voice that and own that, I can share because I'm letting people know that I'm just learning. I'm still just learning. I'm not here as any authority on all of this, but I find it helpful for myself to continue learning and that maybe someday, maybe I'll step into being an authority on some of these things. But, you know, I'm already almost 31, you know, and I still feel like I'm at the beginning. And I don't know. It just feels like it's only helped me to remain humble in this way, to continue to learn from people, and how to get to where I see, you know, myself and where I want to go, essentially.
Yeah. And what this brings up for me is like, that's why you're qualified to lead. We don't have to be fully in our power, or it's like you have to be, it's like vulnerable leadership, and where it's like, and it all brings up for me also the Dunning-Kruger effect. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard it, but I don't recall what it means right now.
Okay, so essentially the Dunning-Kruger effect is where there is a bias in our society because people that are truly qualified to lead, and by that they mean that they're self-aware, that there's other people more qualified than them. So these are people that are super brilliant or super just gifted in some way, yet they're hesitant to step up to the podium because they're aware that there's someone more qualified than them and that they should be aware of that and make room for those people. Well, then, but you have most of the podiums are taken up by people that do not have that self-awareness. So you have people rushing to the leadership position, you have people rushing to the podium because they aren't aware enough to know that there's somebody that's more qualified to speak on it, whatever it is. And so there's a total bias in society where most people rushing, and I kind of see this as like people that are like really good at self-promotion and really good at like, look at me, and they want to be seen everywhere and they want to be seen on every forum and they're constantly wanting to be involved with everything. It's like they're promoting. There's not a lot of substance probably, you know, because it's like, why are they like constantly externalizing? I mean, that's a generalization, but it's like this idea that people that are rushing to like organize Aya ceremonies or even serve Aya ceremonies, like they're completely unaware of their own hubris. But then on the flip side, we have people that would be truly humble leaders that are truly qualified and are self-aware to doubt their qualifications because that's what it takes to be self-aware, not stepping into it because they're, you know, they're aware enough. So, so yeah, it's like, it's summed up by a quote. I forget who said it, but all the problems with the world stem from the fact that the intelligent are full of doubt and the incompetent are cocksure, something like that. And that's the issue. So that's what we're looking at.
It really is. It really is. Well, that's a message that I think needs to be heard, because I'm sure a ton of people out there maybe have this attitude and aren't stepping up into their roles that the divine or God or whatever you want to say has, you know, plans for them in. But it can't happen until you listen to those whispers and take up that mission. And yeah, you know, and that's a little bit of what the purpose is of this show, is just for me to share, because I have been feeling like I'm learning so much. It is a disservice to not share what I'm learning and who I'm learning from. And you know what I mean? That's kind of the mission of this podcast and even the podcast network, because I'm learning so much from all these people, even guests on my friends' shows that I'm like, this is falling into my lap, like you said earlier, you know, like why do I have like great relationships with a bunch of podcasters? Why am I drawn towards it if it isn't falling into my lap and it's not part of my path? And I just feel like it is. And that's all I can do is show up and continue to do what feels right, you know? And I think that's what you're doing with the church. And just to speak, you know, because I know we're running low on time here, more about the church and how people might be able to get involved and learn about it, and the services you offer, and maybe where you see this going in the future.
So speaking to the church specifically, we do a lot of different things. We offer a lot of different kinds of ceremony, and we do a monthly dance with you guys, which has just been such a tremendous gift in my life. I get so much out of it. I don't know if I've told you this, how every week after I'm just flying on cloud nine.
Amazing.
I told you that, like literally for a week, I just beam. Like I feel it every time, just this influx of joy and connection.
Same. I love doing it. It's amazing.
God.
I think we should just dive into that for a second, you know, and just say,
oh my God.
Yeah. So we are co-manifesting ecstatic dance as an event.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It really came to me and Stephen in a journey where we just felt, because we're both yoga teachers. We're very into yoga. We practice pretty much daily. And we understood for the first time in this altered state and this expanded mind space that dance is yoga, you know? And so we were like, wow, so our love of music and our love of yoga can come together in perfect harmony with ecstatic dance. And then we brought it up to you guys, and you were so thankful that I'm so thankful you guys were down to give it a go with us.
Oh my God, are you kidding? We were trying to manifest the DJ. Like we would love to do it. We were like putting it out there of like with the perfect DJ, like, because also that is kind of a thing. Like they have to have the taste. Like you got to have the right taste, But we were like, like probably for 6 months or something, we were like, where's the DJ? Who's the DJ? And then y'all just pop up and are like, hey, what do you think? And y'all are all humble, like you maybe you would be open. And we're like, what? Like literally answered our prayers. And then the first one was just so powerful. And from there, like just divine alignment. And we're so grateful. Like, I mean, there's people that tell us like this is their favorite dance in Austin, and like they go to a lot of them, and like, and I think it really is just y'all's music taste and y'all's the humble alignment of God. Like y'all are not here to make money. Y'all are not here to push an agenda. Y'all are here to uplift the creative power of the community and to amplify the people and to reinstate that ancient tribal dynamic of embodied love and creation. And it's like, that is it. That's it. It. And
that's what brings me joy. So thank you for helping me feel joyous.
Me too. Oh my God. I have goosebumps all over right now. Just like totally it. And and a kind of more long-term note, we definitely are wanting to do the Ecstatic Dance Tour. And partly we're wanting to, this is on the pipeline, to make a list of intentional communities all throughout the U.S. where we can go and do this, throughout and really connect the network. So that's kind of coming in. Really excited to be on the road with you guys when that is the right time.
Absolutely.
And for fantastic. Us, oh my God, like already is, but just going to get better and better. But then like for us, the dance piece is very much about integration, and we like to offer integration in 3 ways. One is through the dance, because it's the embodiment piece and community piece. So people are really getting that kind of nervous system imprint, that ventral vagal, like we're all connected and we're healthy and we're here on the earth and we're moving our bodies together, kind of merging with a collective that feels safe, which heals the nervous system. And then the other piece is a verbal processing, which we do weekly women's and men's circles every Wednesday in South Austin right now. And then we also like to offer art workshops when we're looking at more infrastructural focus, but usually we do an art integration night every month. Not right now though, Amazing. But so we like to integrate in multiple ways. And so all of that community work is to support the other work that we do, ceremony work, and it's we do a lot of different things though. I don't know how much I can share here, so just wanting to be vague, but
sure,
always happy
that makes sense.
For people to, you can email us at churchofthesacredwomb@gmail.com, and that's, just be really vague. We're happy to meet you on Telegram and get more info. Just be vague. Like you would not believe how people email us and we're like, really, bro? Like, really? Like, come on,
Right.
But and then, and otherwise just here we're community in Austin, and it is our longer term goals are, we really feel geared toward the land and shifting to a land-based structure. So our primary goal at this time is buying and moving, whether that's, we're looking at San Marcos unrestricted area, we're looking at Cedar Creek unrestricted area. So we may be moving further out of town in the near future, and really wanting to build a community hub that can offer people more like a base, whether that's like nomadic type situation, or whether that's ceremony retreat type situation, or just general people that are down in their luck and needing, a base to kind of get through to the next chapter. So that's what we're working on right now. And then
beautiful.
Yeah, a lot more is coming through, but right now that's what I'm feeling called to share.
Amazing. So your website is churchofthesacredwomb.com.
.org.
.org.
Yeah. And I feel called, we just launched our online shop portion, which supports all the community building work. So that's where you can get hape and cacao and things like that. Beautiful. And we launched that. It's called Luminary Union. And the website is luminaryunion.love. And that we're
Cool.
really excited about that. That's going to kind of balance out a lot of the free labor that we do. We give services to a lot of people that cannot pay. We do a lot of supporting of people because we are a church.
Right.
It is a church. And
Totally.
in that way, we struggle, or I don't even want to use the term struggle, but we navigate between business and community. And when God is telling you to support someone, you do it. Like, that's what you do, because that's what the role is. And so, so that kind of supports. So all the purchases there support the community building work and our endeavors and everything. So really grateful for support there. And but we're really excited because that's like the fulfillment of a whole long, when we'd get that up, and there's a lot more that we need to still put on. And then, but yeah, otherwise we're on Facebook and Instagram, just at Church of the Sacred Womb. And yeah, really building that community base so that we can all survive the apocalypse.
Yep.
Consider it.
Let's do it. Let's survive together.
Yeah. Let's do it together.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Clem. This is amazing.
Yeah,
I still have even more things I want to talk to you about, but we'll do it either off the air or we'll have to book another podcast. But
in the flow.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Absolutely amazing time. And we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you for joining us for this show.
Love you so much. Thank you all so
much.
Love you. And keep going. We got this. We're all figuring it out together. Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Keep going. Let's go.
Keep going. Let's do it.